We're at the halfway mark of the NBA season. Most teams have played their 41 games, but today we're going to be talking about the future of the Grizzlies, who have just had the most cursed season ever. Morant hurt, Adams is hurt, Clark hurt, Smart hurt, Bane hurt. We're going to talk about the Utah Jazz. They're on a crazy streak, about like 14-5 plus in their last like 19 games. Are they for real? Should they be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline? Worst take, best take? Let's get you on foul trouble. You know, I've never had a consistent intro on this podcast. It's kind of interesting.
It's okay. You gotta keep them guessing always. How was your long weekend, James?
Amazing weekend. Let's just, switching leagues. There's only a couple more weeks of NFL action as a Giants fan. Cowboys lost. Eagles lost. My satellite team, the Buffalo Bills. No one circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. We're in it. It's great.
I did want to just like put this question on you. What? Because I'm not like, I'm an NFL fan, but I'm not like that like steeped in the culture. What is like the NBA equivalent of the Bucks beating the Eagles in the first round?
Oh my God. I think it's almost like when the Trailblazers the Lakers lost to, it's kind of tough because this Buccaneers team is not going to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like we haven't had an NBA like disappointment quite like this.
Who would you say is like the closest thing to like what the Eagles were supposed to be this season?
Ooh, it's so tough because like last year's Mavericks completely fell apart in the standings, but like the Eagles were 10-1. Yeah, like we haven't had an NBA team go from like first seed to like literally looking like the worst team in the entire league. I don't think in my lifetime. Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, I have it, but it's an injury related one. When the Bulls, Derrick Rose got hurt and they lost to the Sixers.
Okay, so it's just like a crazy 7-2 upset.
The Eagles had injuries too, but they looked really bad before those injuries as well. So I don't even want to compare it to that D-Rose Bulls team because like that team would have won if D-Rose never got hurt.
Yeah. No. It's definitely a hard one. But you know who else has injuries? The Memphis Grizzlies. Steven Adams, of course, out for the season.
PCL
after
surgery.
Undergoing knee surgery. Desmond Bane did not play yesterday either. Jaren Jackson Jr. has been fighting injuries.
Here, so let me
Ja
go
Morant's,
through
of course, out.
Ja has shoulder surgery, so he's season ending. Adams had PCL surgery, which is a knee thing, season ending. Clark had an Achilles rupture, so he's actually supposed to be coming back around All-Star, but a little too late. Marcus Smart has a finger injury that's going to keep him out 6 weeks, and Desmond Bane has a sprained ankle that's going to keep him out 6 weeks. The Grizzlies are 15-25. They're 13th in the West, and this is kind of just the season from hell. I mean, it's the unavoidable. It's the injury season. I know as much blame wants to go toward Ja for the 25-game suspension. Like, it's mostly the injuries, right? Like, obviously this team was really bad without Ja, but they were also without some other guys, and the Ja suspension, I don't know if we want to touch on it. It's weird because in the moment and in a vacuum, it kind of felt like the right number. But then stacked against these other suspensions we've seen, like Draymond Green, it's felt like overly punishing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely. And also like with the Miles Bridges, like kind of suspension or just like they kind of like tacked it on of him missing last year. It definitely has felt a little bit hefty, but honestly, if I'm a Grizzlies fan, it's kind of a blessing in disguise because if you have Ja healthy for the start of the season, maybe you're sitting more of in a range where you have to make more of a decision of, are we going to put our foot down, pedal to the metal, try to make the play-in, or just like fade back? And now I feel like the answer is just made for them. It's really easy.
Yeah, so I guess like let's talk about the Grizzlies last season because last season the Grizzlies were 51-31 and they had this like kind of embarrassing playoff loss to the Lakers. Like as far as a 6-game series goes, I feel like that's as embarrassing as you can get between like Dylan Brooks' antics. They had a quarter where they scored like 9 points and they lost by like 30, but so last year's Grizzlies had a lot of injuries too. Morant missed 21 games. Jaren missed 19 games. Bane missed 24 games. The big injury, even though it's not a part of their big three, was Steven Adams. He missed 40 games, which included the last 36 in the playoffs. They were 20-16 without him. So they were like 31-15 with him. So obviously they're just a completely different team when they have their full, size load. I feel like what we've seen is like, ideally you want to play Jaren at the 5, but I feel like as the league has kind of gotten bigger again, I do think Jaren is better suited in that 4 role. The big stat, 13.4 offensive rebounds per game with Steven Adams playing, which would have tied the Rockets for the NBA lead. 10.3 offensive rebounds without him. So that's 3 possessions less a game, which is like 3 possessions is a lot in a league where teams are averaging like 1.05 points a possession. That's 3 whole extra points a game.
Absolutely. And for a team that isn't like the most, hardcore efficient team out there, those are super valuable, especially for the Grizzlies. And I think we've seen, like, obviously Jaren Jackson Jr. is a super valuable player and like kind in a unicorn in his own right, a guy that has proven despite his size, he can definitely play next to another big. I think he's proven this year that that's also what he prefers. He's not about that life of scrapping for offensive rebounds. He's versatile. He can guard on the wing better than nearly any other big in the NBA. And there was thought, especially from myself, of like, let's see it. Like, this is the time we're unlocking Triple J at the center position. But, and you were kind of on this as well. That's just not like the best structure for this team, I think.
Yeah, no, I think this team really is meant to be like a big, rugged, physical team. And I think like to tag back to that playoff series is like, it felt weird because it was like, wow, they have no answer for AD. And I'm not saying like Adams and Clark are the answer for AD, but there was this like, this year you're seeing with Minnesota, they have this killer rotation with Gobert, Towns, and Naz Reid. But like, you kind of forget like last season and 2 seasons ago, like Clark, Jaren, and Adams was kind of like the killer big man rotation where it's like at all times you have one big man who's like doing a lot of cool things out there, or if not 2. So a fun stat, last year of the Grizzlies 7 most played 5-man lineups, 5 of them were outscoring teams by over 11 points per 100 possessions. So I think we're kind of forgetting like how good this team was last year before all the injuries came up. So I don't know how you want to do this exercise of what they should do going forward. I divided this into the keepers / the building blocks and the decision guys. So obviously the keepers, I've got John Morant, 24 years old, under contract for the next 4 seasons. Amazing. Desmond Bane, 25 years old, under contract for the next 4 seasons. Amazing. Jaren Jackson, 24 years old, under contract through 2025. With these 3 on the court last season, they were plus 11.7, and they had a suffocating 105 defensive rating with these 3-man lineups.
Yeah, I mean, that's just classic Memphis grit and grind basketball right there. I do want to say one more thing about that playoff series before we get too into their roster. I totally agree with all those like stalwarts. Those guys are going to be on the roster moving forward. It is the matchup against the Lakers was totally a styles makes fights matchup of, I don't know if there was a worse matchup for that Grizzlies team at that time than that Lakers team, just to completely like do what they do, but better.
I do think though, if the Grizzlies were healthy, it almost flips the script.
Yeah, exactly.
Where it's like, oh, now the Lakers, who I feel like got all the way to the Western Finals by being huge, were like, oh wow, this team's kind of bigger than us, especially when AD is like sitting, like the 10 minutes AD sits, like Clark is eating us alive.
Yeah, and just like AD having to deal with a Steven Adams, a healthy Steven Adams
in addition to Jaren.
That's just going to take a lot out of you, and he's not going to be able to do the offensive things that he did that really won the Lakers that series. But let's keep rolling. Just keep rolling with that.
Okay, so I've got 6 guys who I wrote down as decision guys.
Okay.
So the first one is Marcus Smart, who's 29 years old. So pretty in line with the timeline. I mean, that's what's beautiful about this Memphis rebuild is like, I'll be honest, if you just told me they just keep everyone on roll it next season, I think that's actually a really solid plan for this team because I think the roster is really, really good when it's healthy. And I think the ages all line up pretty good. But first guy's Marcus Smart. He's making $19 million next year, $21 million the season after. 29 years old. I have him down as a likely trade. How do you feel about Smart?
I'm on the complete opposite side.
Okay.
My thing about Marcus Smart is you traded for him as a win now piece. He's contract controlled. You have him for a few more seasons, and you didn't really get a chance to see what the Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, like backcourt really looked like together. And I'm still a believer that it could look really good. Really, the one game that we saw with all three of them on the court, they absolutely destroyed the Lakers. And if I have to put all of my faith in a one game sample size, I want to I'll put it in that matchup, at least like the matchup that knocked them out of the playoffs. Why are you leaning more of maybe cashing in?
So I leaned likely trade, not just because I kind of viewed the Smart trade as more of a, hey, Ja's going to miss 25 games. And if we don't bring in a point guard this year, we're kind of fucked.
Yeah.
And obviously it didn't work out the way they thought. So I kind of viewed Smart as either he's always going to be the sixth man, which I'm with you. I think is a really good role for him. I don't know if I love a triple guard lineup with this team, but I do like that they could keep him as a sixth man. So keeping him, trading him, again, that's why I was kind of like, if they just stuck with everybody, I actually think that's a really good idea for how this team's constructed. But I feel like if they could change him into a small forward with his salary slot, I think they would. I just don't know if they're going to be able to find that guy.
Yeah, if it's a starting level small forward, I'm with you. Then
unless GG Jackson too just becomes that guy. He's looked great the last two games.
Plays like he did yesterday.
Yeah.
He's the absolute truth.
I guess we'll do a side note. This GG Jackson has been playing. He scored over 20 the last two games for the Grizzlies. He's looked athletic. He's looked really awesome.
His shot looks amazing.
It does. It's so early in the GG Jackson experiment. I don't really want to talk about him as one of these, crazy building blocks.
And he turned
right
19
now.
like 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. So that's the thing. It's always sample size with a lot of these things. But okay, Smart, you say definitive keep. I say leaning trade if they can get a wing.
If you can get a starter, do it. But I'm just dubious as to whether you could get a real starter.
And I'm with you. Like, if they keep Smart, I think that's a good move as well. Smart. Okay, next guy is Steven Adams. He's 30 years old. He's coming off his PCL surgery. From what I'm reading, PCL surgery, guys come back and they're pretty much the same. So Adams is 30. He's a bit older, but I feel like he's kind of proven himself to, at least at the moment, be kind of a core guy. We're seeing NBA players, even role players, play well into their 32, 33, 34 season. So my thing was likely keep plus extend, depending on the cost.
Yeah, I think a likely keep. I am a little bit nervous to see like what the latter part of this contract, and I definitely wouldn't look to get Steven Adams on a new contract just knowing the mileage, but I'll tease a little bit of what I've been thinking. This trade deadline, the thing that I would like to see the Grizzlies do most is experiment with potential Steven Adams replacements with the salary that they have, but we'll get to that later. Let's keep rolling down the list.
Okay, next guy, Brandon Clark, 27 years old. He's making the next 3 seasons after this one, 12.5, 12.5, 12.5. That is a great contract. He's 27, a little older than I would have thought, but still right in line with the timeline. So I put likely keep unless he's the chip that is what's required to get the star.
100%.
And that's kind of where my Smart thing was going, is to get the star, I kind of viewed it as it's probably some combo of Smart, Clark, and Aldama or something like that to make salaries work. But okay, so I think we're both on the keep Clark unless it's absolutely necessary. All right, so next guy, Luke Kennard, $14 million team option. I put they likely let Luke Kennard go. This is the big thing. If they keep everyone else, but they decline the team option on Kennard, it gets them under the tax apron. So small market team, feels like the writing's on the wall for this one.
Yeah, I don't really see a situation where it makes sense to keep Luke Kennard. I think even if they're not concerned with getting underneath the apron, I think Luke Kennard, he really hasn't panned out to be that guy that they wanted him to be. He's the clear, if everyone's healthy, fourth guard in that rotation. He doesn't have that positional flexibility. He doesn't really he's not a perfect match for, this team and what they do. Mm-hmm. So I definitely have a few Luke Kennard trades that I've crafted up. but we can go into them later.
Okay, let me go through a couple more things. So Santi Aldama, he's kind of been playing the three sometimes for this team. He's like 6'11". This guy is huge, but the 3-point shot is not quite there. He's only making 3.9 next year, and then he has about a $6 million qualifying offer. I wrote keeper just because he's a rotation guy. But again, another guy that I could see being part of a package for a star. And the final guy I just wrote, probably extend him, Zaire Williams, only 22, so he's nowhere near a finished product. 6.1 next year, 8.3 qualifying the year after.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't want to pay Zaire Williams for his next contract. So if someone is really in love with Zaire Williams or like that's someone you can package in a trade for a better player, I think I would do that. Aldama is just on such a small contract.
Yeah.
And I really love how he plays the game. He is a good passer, a great passer for his size. Of course, you wish that he could shoot a little bit more consistently, but I wouldn't give him away for like a second round pick.
Okay. So this is what brings me to the draft, right? Because I think with all of these guys, you can make a case for pretty much all of them but Kennard that they should stay. So the draft. I simmed the draft 10 times, just out of curiosity. 7, 7, 8, 3, 7, 2, 2, 4, 7. So the Grizzlies have a 37% chance of getting into that top 4. So depending on how the lottery goes, the Grizzlies either are going to pick up like the 8th guy in the draft. Life moves on. They still have a great team. They have a really strong core. If the Grizzlies move into the top 4, they kind of have like 2 paths they can go down. The 03 Pistons pack, where they're like already a really good team and they, have this draft pick for whatever reason. It's an interesting draft. There's a guy named Nikola Topic, who is a second-rated prospect. So there's a guy though from Baylor, Jacoby Walter, 6'5" guard from Baylor who can really, really shoot. I don't know if a rookie's really going to come in next year and just take this team by storm, but seems like there are prospects in this draft that could slot in nicely on this Grizzlies team. Or the 07 Celtics path, where all of a sudden you're trading for a star that just takes your team over the top. The Nets are 10th in the East. Do you think there's a world where they can work out a Bridges trade centered around this pick if this pick gets to 3 to 4?
Mikal Bridges?
Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, totally. I think that would make a lot of sense for at least the Grizzlies moving forward. I'm always going to be a little hesitant from the Nets standpoint to cash in on Mikal just because they still aren't in complete control of their pick situation yet.
So here's one that I'm a little worried about because you're going to be trading a serious player for I don't want to be rude because I like this player a lot. We've talked about him quite a bit on this podcast. I'm a fan of his. I think he slots in nice to almost any team in the league. But would you say Marcus Smart is a serious player?
Yeah, sometimes too serious.
How would you describe Kyle Kuzma? A little unserious.
A champion. He's a champion.
But maybe you get that 5th, 6th pick. Maybe you get that 7th pick, which is kind of where they're slotted right now. Is there a Kuzma trade? Because Kuzma slots in nicely at the 3, and he kind of completes the starting lineup.
Yeah, I like that. And that's a trade that I would even be inclined to push for at the trade deadline. Because any front court player that they would be acquiring, they're going to have to make that fit with Jaren work. And you can at least use the rest of this season to start that melding process. Yeah.
I guess the only worry, though, is if you trade Smart to get that Kuzma trade off the road. If you can get Kuzma and keep the pick, that's a home run. I figured to get a Kuzma or especially Mikal, this pick is going to have to get. I think for Kuzma, it could be 7 and they could make it happen. I think for them to get Mikal, this pick is going to have to get into that top 4, which they have about a little better than a 1 in 3 chance of happening.
Yeah, I agree that the Mikal trade would probably be an off-season trade. I would really push if I'm serious about a Kyle Kuzma trade like that to try to make that happen at the deadline so that pick regresses a little bit and gets a little bit closer to the playoff seeding picks than the lottery, classic lottery top 10 pick. Or maybe even throw a protection on there. I think you could get away with that.
Yeah.
Especially from a bottom team like that.
I think the Grizzlies, they're having the season from hell. Morant suspension, all the injuries from last season entering the season. But going through every player, going through this draft prospect and then seeing that maybe this GG Jackson guy, look, he's 19 to your point, 20 games, 2 points in a row. Like, there's a lot of NBA players who do that. I don't want to get like too ahead of that, but like, I'm like oddly confident that the Grizzlies can come into next season and be like once again be like 1 seed contenders.
I'm 100% right there with you. Yeah. Also at the deadline, I feel like the people that they could sell on are like the David Roddy types, the Jake LaRavia types. If there's teams that really like them and will throw a second round pick at you, I'm like, that's where you can build up your like draft assets without like really rocking the boat. Do you have any Luke Kennard trades that you liked?
So I didn't. And I think this might be another case of James and Patrick have very different valuations of the player. I don't know what NBA team is going to trade for this guy. He theoretically is a masterful fit just because of the crazy shooting ability. He's a great shooter on the catch, off a handoff, on the move, but he can't get into a rotation. So like, and this is a lot of teams now where it's like the Clippers. Oh yeah, a great off the ball shooter seems like that'd be really nice next to all their ISO guys. The Grizzlies, like this team really struggles to score in the half court. A really good shooter seems like they'd alleviate that. This guy can't get on the court.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's not great, but the one thing that I feel like teams can keep talking themselves into is really great shooting. And for the right person, if I'm the Grizzlies, I would throw a pick, some kind of like heavily protected pick on there. Probably my favorite trade that I came up with was just a 1-to-1 swap, Luke Kennard for Robert Williams. It's a roll of the dice, but if you're getting a healthy Robert Williams and you can put him next to who's only making $11.5 million a year, you're cutting your salary a little bit, and you're letting the Trailblazers get off that salary slot a little bit earlier, giving them a pick. And maybe that's a front court. I mean, it's definitely a front court combination that I would be super scared of.
What is the? I mean, I love that for Memphis. I guess Portland, because when I view Portland, it seems like it's a lot of shooters already.
Yeah. It just lets them get a pick. I would say like I would throw them a protected pick on there, and then that maybe like eventually turns into 2 seconds. You get off the scariness of Robert Williams. Right now, you could maybe still trade him. If he gets hurt again, he might become an untradeable contract that you just have to buy out. I made a DeAndre Ayton trade as well.
For Memphis?
Oh,
no. Memphis doesn't want DA.
Luke Kennard.
No, Memphis doesn't want
Steven
DA.
Adams.
Memphis.
And Zaire Williams.
Memphis didn't just hang up the phone. They threw it in the garbage can.
Yeah, I understand Memphis. I understand why you would do that. I feel like you could talk yourself into it. DeAndre is like the perfectly sized person, has a little bit more scoring, is not quite the rebounder that Steven Adams is, of course.
If you told me DeAndre Ayton was going to commit to being like a rough, rugged big, like I'm all in. But if you tell me I'm going to get DeAndre Ayton, who we've seen this season, then like absolutely not.
Yeah, no. How about what about Nikola Vucevic? Would that interest you? Luke Kennard, okay. Jake LaRavia, that's it.
No picks.
You, as the Bulls, you can get off of all the Vucevic money, and if you're the Bulls, you are needing a bunch of shooters. You get a roll of the dice at a young guy.
Okay, so Vucevic is making 18.5 this year, 20 million next year, 21 the year after. Vuce is 33. He'll be 34. Oh, man, that trade isn't. I feel like when I first heard it, I was like, I feel like the Bulls are not getting anywhere near enough value. But if they are going to be up to be even fire sale mode, and like Vuce is 33, like right, like
I'll give you some second round picks.
I don't know if I love this. I see the thing for Memphis is I feel like Vuce is just very anti-team identity, but I feel like Vuce and Jaren together, or
it's a great front.
I don't know if you could play Vuce with Steven just because of the lack of like horizontal movement, especially as Vuce and Steven are getting into their more mid-30s. But I mean, if you can get that trade, that value to me is really, really, really good. I'm just worried for Memphis. Wow, I mean that's a good trade. It'll help their half-court offense a lot. But I don't know, man. That's just a tough one. I feel like it's like a weird. I feel like the thing with Memphis is like almost all these moves that help their offense, especially in the half court, also hurt their defense. But I don't know. How do you feel? How do you feel about that trade? Like, I kind of like it. I kind of like it. Yeah,
I think it matches the Grizzlies in a way that, like, a lot of the Grizzlies players, they are rough, but which I think Vooch can be physical at times.
Yeah, he's European,
but they're also high IQ, and I would love that little added extra passing influx into their offense. It would definitely be a move before a move. I think if you do something like that, you've got to trade Steven Adams. Maybe you can keep him as a guy coming off the bench, but that would just be a lot of your cap dedicated to big guys.
I guess my concern. Well, so Vooch is having a really down year from three, but it's like this. So Vooch is a real. Wow, this is weird. Since 2020, 40%, 39%, 31%, 35%, 27% from three.
This year, 27% from three.
Yeah,
Yikes.
but again, that's
a whole added
similar
new
attempts,
wrinkle
but
to
weird,
your offense.
Weird. Yeah, no, it's. I feel like the value is way too good for Memphis to ever say no to that trade, and I think Chicago maybe would say yes if they really just want to get off Vooch's contract. But yeah, that's an interesting concept. All right.
Yeah.
It's a fun trade. I don't know if that's even being discussed, but that's a fun one.
No, I mean, hey, I've got no intel, guys. I just like playing around with the trade machine. And then my last thing was like, maybe there's some kind of like Luke Kennard and Brandon Clark for Andrew Wiggins if you want to like get in, buy low there. And you can give the Warriors another shooter, which they like desperately need, but it's definitely not like a straightforward path to make a deal like that work.
Kind of like that for both teams. I mean, the Warriors, like Wiggins has been so bad. Getting Clark is nice. He's on a nice contract. I mean, I just feel like Kennard is, dude, it's just that team option. Like, I don't think any team would pick that up.
Yeah, no, but that also makes it an expiring deal, which has value in its own right. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways that the Grizzlies can move forward. And if you're a Grizzlies fan, it's definitely disappointing what this season has been. But like you said,
I think the future is super bright for this team.
Future is still totally as bright. And at the end of the day, you've got Ja Morant. The number one thing that you're worrying about if you're a Ja Morant fan is like, you don't want to see the Derrick Rose injury. You don't want to see the Penny Hardaway injury. And you know what? He's almost going to have an entire year of rest on his knees. So
yeah,
at least there's that.
I think like the other thing too with Memphis, like I know I keep taking back to last season, but like Morant was 23, Bane was 24, Jeremy was 23. This team is like, the core three building blocks of the team aren't even at their apex yet. Mm-hmm. And there's so much potential. And I think like this season could be a season where we look back like 2 years from now and we're like, wow, like letting Desmond Bane get some more on-ball chops for a whole year was like pretty good for his development, even though we haven't seen the passing develop, which was kind of what we wanted to see from Bane in that lead role. But like, he will be playing with Morant more. Like, I'm really excited for the future of the Grizzlies. I just kind of hope Ja can keep it all together off the court.
And
because his legal troubles are not gone.
No, his legal troubles are still around. But also, there is some low-key, like, Duncan upside to this offseason for them. Like you said, if their pick falls into a range where they can jump in the lottery, this draft is one of those, like, Anthony Bennett type drafts where, as long as you can identify your guy, which the Grizzlies front office has showed us time and time again that they are good drafters, they could maybe walk away with a guy that just absolutely blows the roof off their ceiling. And then all these trades that we talked about doesn't even matter because you got another guy, and that's what's really important in the NBA.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited for the Grizzlies' future. Like, I agree with you. The one thing, like, they will probably need to start thinking about like who's going to be in the Steven Adams spot. It's not like Steven Adams has been the healthiest guy throughout his career. Mm-hmm. So like if they could get another like rough and rugged big like to just slot in behind him and kind of be groomed to be the future of their position there. Like, I like that for them. But all right, should we move on to the Utah Jazz?
Let's move on to the Utah Jazz, the team that is lighting the NBA on fire. They're 15-5 in their last 20 games. James, there are 6 teams in the NBA who have had a span of 15-5 or better. Can you tell me what those 6 teams are
in the league this year?
Jazz? Yeah.
Sixers?
Nope.
Sixers have never gone 15-5?
They have not had a stretch of 15-5.
Wow. The Bucks?
The Bucks?
Celtics?
The Celtics?
The Nuggets?
The Nuggets?
How many more teams?
2 more.
Timberwolves?
Timberwolves?
Thunder?
Oh, I guess 1 more.
Who else is top of the West? Those are the top 3 teams in the West. Who was like 3 before the Thunder?
A team that, similarly to the Jazz, started off the season very rough.
Is it the Cavaliers?
It is not the
Who is
Cavaliers.
it?
It is in the West. It is the Clippers.
Oh, yeah, the Clippers.
Yeah, so Boston, Denver, the Clippers, the Bucks, the Thunder, and Minnesota are the only other teams that have had a span of 15-5 or better this season. That's almost a quarter of the year. Super elite run to go on. And in that time, in the last 20 games, they have had the 8th best offensive rating in the league, the 14th best defensive rating in the league, and the 9th best net rating in the league. It's all behind like really rugged, rough play from their front court. They made a change. They put Walker Kessler on the bench. They've been starting John Collins, and they've been starting Colin Sexton, who has been really, really awesome for them. What have you seen from this Jazz? We're talking about this because we want to decide, is this Jazz team, should they be a buyer or should they be a seller going into this trade deadline season?
So I think I kind of went into this with a little bit more of a cynical view because I also have an interesting record stretch exercise for you that I think you're going to find really fun. But I think the big thing is like you're playing with Simone Fontecchio.
Come on, my guy.
Simone Fettuccini. He's Italian. He's 28. The guy, he's giving them size. He's giving them shooting. He's giving them passing. They've got like a nice flow to their offense. Markkanen, I think, like is one of the best play finishers in the NBA. So I'm not going to take anything away from the Jazz. Like the last 5 games, they beat the Sixers, no Embiid. The Bucks, no Lillard. Nuggets, full Nuggets, crushed them. Raptors beat them. Lakers, no LeBron, beat them too. So they've been beating a lot of really good teams. They've gotten kind of lucky with teams like resting their guys against the Jazz.
They absolutely have.
But they've still been winning. Like that Nuggets game, Jokic played. Murray played. They crushed them. So I kind of went into this, Patrick, because I still am not sure I buy the Jazz as a team. Just like when I look at the roster, I'm not sure I buy it. So I have a fun exercise for you.
Okay, let's do it.
In the NBA, obviously we talked about 15-7, or you said 15-5 in their last 20. So I have them down as 15-7 since December 1st. Either way, amazing record.
Yeah, this is mine since December 11th.
Okay. So the big thing in the NBA, you look at the NBA standings, you Google NBA standings, it'll show you their team record, it'll show you their last 10. So the Jazz are 8-2 in their last 10. So out of curiosity, because we kind of had this weird discussion about like statistical anomalies, stretches, how often does a sub-playoff team, so a team that misses the playoff or even the play-in, go 8-2 in a given season? How many times do you think that's happened in the last 2 seasons where a team that didn't make the play-in or the playoff went 8-2 in a 10-game stretch?
In a 10-game stretch, I would imagine this is a little bit more like this happens more than you would think, especially because of end-of-season stretches. That happens a lot. So I don't even know what.
Most of the time when these stretches happen, they happen during this part of the season, I found out.
Really?
Yeah, so that's why I'm a little bit pump the brakes. But
so can you just state the question one more time?
How many teams in the last 2 seasons that missed the play-in and the playoff, so just a completely sub-playoff team, a bottom 10 team, how many of those teams had an 8-2 stretch?
Like 8?
5. So 8 would be crazy. Because you got to remember, to get 8 wins, that's a huge chunk of the season.
And to be a bottom, out of the play-in.
Last year, the Mavericks did it December 21st through January 8th. The Pacers did it last year, December 21st through January 8th. Weird mirror there where they did it the exact same date range.
Yeah, that is weird.
The
That Halliburton stretch.
Yeah, matches up with this Jazz
Yeah.
stretch. The 2022 Magic, early December to late December, did it. The 2021 Spurs did it in March and April, and the 2021 Wizards did it October 27th through November 15th. My point being, I think this Jazz team is really good. Last year, this team was 11th or 12th in the West at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. I kind of feel the same way about them, to be honest. And I feel like looking back at these 5 teams that have done it, I think it's kind of hard when you're in the moment to not get wrapped up with like, wow, look how good they are. This is their offensive rating during this stretch. But it's like, this isn't actually as uncommon as we think it is for teams that are right on the edge of the playoffs to have a really good stretch like this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you with the 10-game stretch, but it has been a little bit more sustained.
That's true.
Than what you're normally going to see out of a bad team. And I'm not saying that this Jazz team is like, I think they're just about right. I think they're a play-in, like, they have play-in talent on their team. What makes this whole discussion really interesting, in my opinion, is the status of their first-round pick. Their first-round pick, they actually traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder in 2021, and it has a 1 through 10 protection on it this year, and it has a 1 through 8 protection on it next year, and then the year after that, it turns into 2 second-round picks.
Yeah, so I wrote down the case for buyers and the case for being sellers, and that pick was a big reason why I think they should be sellers.
See, my thing is like, with their record at where it is right now, it's going to be really hard, even if they sell, to gain that much ground on any, like, I don't think they're going to be able to get it. It's going to be really close getting it to that 10th pick.
Yeah, true. Talking about the other team, like Memphis is another team that's trying to be like, how do we get by that Spurs, Pistons, Wizards triumph?
Like, they're definitely not going to pass Detroit, San Antonio, Washington, Charlotte, Portland, Memphis. Probably won't pass Toronto. Probably won't pass Atlanta. Then you're getting into like Golden State, Chicago, Houston. Like, they're going to have to be worse than four of those teams, basically.
Well,
to keep their...
I honestly, the way the Raptors have been since the trade, I know small sample, but like, you don't think that they could drop behind the Raptors if they start selling? I think they could easily drop behind the Rockets. And
Let's
Lakers
talk
if they
about
start
what
selling.
they would be selling.
So that's the question. So here's my thing for them being sellers. So that top 10 pick, they only get it if it's top 10. In 2025, they own the Cavaliers picks and the Timberwolves picks. I don't think those are going to be very good picks.
No, they are probably not going to be very good
So
picks.
the big like crown jewel, like I feel like there's been this lot of discussion, like Utah and OKC own the whole league's draft picks, but then you go through it and it's like none of those are that crazy. Like in 2027, they own the Lakers' top 4 protected picks. So it's like, okay, like I don't know, like I think that's like this crown jewel pick that's talked about that way. I don't think it is a crown jewel pick. So I think the case for being sellers is they have ammo in terms of number of picks, but they don't have ammo in terms of like coveted picks, right? And if they just keep being a decent team, my worry for the Jazz, and it sucks, right? I hate being like every team should tank, right? Because I don't think every team should tank, but I think the problem for Utah is they're probably the NBA's players' least favorite team to go to in free agency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, my thing is another thing that should inform what they do is just the caliber of the draft class.
Yeah, that's true.
If they end up keeping their pick this year, first of all, just with the young talent that they have on the roster, it's going to be pretty hard to keep it next year. And I would much rather keep it next year than have the pick this year.
I guess my thing though is like, as much as we can go into a draft and be like, this is the draft that will define the draft, like no one knows. Not even the NBA teams know, right? Like the Wiggins-Jabari draft was like unbelievably hyped back in the day. And like neither Wiggins nor Jabari really amounted to being a superstar.
That is true.
Like, I don't know. I like this goes for a lot of different sports leagues, but like, I feel like a lot of the times when we're like, this draft's gonna suck, usually ends up being kind of decent, surprisingly decent.
Yeah, it's like you find your guys.
As good as NBA teams are at assessing talent, like what did Devin Booker go? Like 7th in his draft, 8th?
He went 13th.
Yeah, 13th. Like Bam Adebayo went like 14th in his draft. Like Nikola Jokic went 56 or whatever. Like, I don't know. I think that's the only time I'd maybe pump the brakes on like, oh, this draft sucks. Let's just plan for next year's draft being better. I mean, obviously, you've got the 2 Rutgers guys in next year's draft, so they're probably going to be like the best 2 players in history.
Like
but,
maybe a Michael Jordan, Hakeem
like,
Olajuwon kind of value.
Yeah, but I'm kidding. But
here's another thing that I realized. I think so. I'm pretty high on Lauri Markkanen. I think he's
same.
He's
I am too.
just awesome. You can't find like unicorn dudes that just can do everything on offense like him. Who is the Jazz's GM?
Danny Ainge.
Danny Ainge.
But that's why I also think they're going to be sellers.
No. Wait. So, the 2006-2007 Boston Celtics.
Yep.
Terrible team.
Yep.
Right? They were built around one scoring
forward. Yeah.
Paul Pierce. Not too dissimilar to Lauri Markkanen.
Wait a second.
They had a good amount of picks.
Wait a second. No.
I think that the Jazz should be looking to acquire a star at a great, I don't think they should force it. If you can get like a DeJounte Murray for cheap, for one of those, for like a terrible Cleveland pick or a terrible Minnesota pick, or if you can get the Bulls to give you a pick to take on Zach LaVine, those are the kinds of trades that I would start looking for if I'm the Jazz right now.
So you're doing the case for being a buyer. I'm going to push back on the Markkanen Pierce thing because Pierce, for his career, not a great passer from like an assist total wise, but Markkanen is like a career 1.5 assist guy. Like even in this more first option role, like Markkanen does not pass.
I'm with you. I'm not saying
he's a very unique play
is worse
finisher
than Lauri Markkanen, but it just changes it a little bit. Yeah. Markkanen's going to be your Ray Allen. You're going to have to acquire your 1 and your 2. But I think right now they just weirdly are set up in the same way to where like there's a few like star-ish players like Ray Allen was at the time in Seattle where like you could maybe get them on the cheap right now. I'm not saying you force it. But it would be such a coup if the Jazz could say, yeah, we have 2 of the best like contracts in the NBA in DeJounte Murray and Lauri Markkanen right now. And we still have like this whole like stockpile of assets waiting in our coffers just in case a mega star becomes available. And then like, you know what? We're going to trade for him because we're the Jazz and we can't get you to come any other way.
Okay. So I'm going to skip the rest of my being sellers. It's really just, this team is actually a little bit older than you think for guys that get a lot of minutes on this team. So you're thinking almost there's a world where like they get DeJounte Murray on good value. They get Zach LaVine on great value because obviously LaVine's situation's weird. Now all of a sudden you've got Kessler, Markkanen, LaVine, and Murray.
Yes.
That's a pretty good team.
Exactly.
And you've got Simone Fontecchio running the 3.
Yeah. Simone Fontecchio.
That is a fun team. I like that team. I mean, that's a good case for being buyers. So also one thing I had on my case for being buyers is, to your point, like those Cavs and Wolves picks in 2025 probably won't be that good. Why not trade them and get value from them now?
They're most likely not going to become more valuable than they are right now.
Exactly. So that was what I had on the case for being buyers, is because I'm not as high in the assets, like why not cash it in now? The one thing I wanted to say for the case for being sellers is, especially knowing Danny's history of fleecing people, I feel like he could get a lot for Markkanen, given how good Markkanen's contract is. Like just an absurd draft pick haul. But it just begs the question, like, you know, Danny Ainge is a bit older. How long does he want to string out this rebuild? Because right now it does feel like they're kind of in that either or direction land.
He has 2 more years left on his contract, Markkanen. And I personally would lean on the side of like, if we're going to trade him, let's do it in the offseason. Just see, like, because he's still playing well.
Because I think that's the thing with Markkanen that makes him such a crazy trade chip is because the contract is so good. Like, and if you're looking at a team like maybe the Thunder view Markkanen as like the ultimate finishing piece to take them from like fun young team to like, okay, we can win the title this year is like, all right, man, I know you guys have like 30 picks. I want 20 of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you can do something like that, I'm definitely in from a Jazz perspective. But yeah, it's just a really exciting time to be a Jazz fan, I think. Like, Keontae George has been awesome. Walker Kessler had a really rough start to the year, and since he's been back, has been affecting their defense in similar ways to what he was doing in his rookie year. But yeah, as far as contracts, I think you do want to look to trade Talen Horton-Tucker coming up at that deadline, turn him into more consistent, like more money that's going to stay on the books. He's making $11 million this year that is expiring. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything else on the Jazz?
I mean, I like this buyer's world you've put together. I guess it doesn't seem very Danny Ainge like.
I mean, it's exactly what Danny Ainge did.
I know, but you cannot compare Garnett and Allen to Levine and Murray.
Yeah, they would have to find another.
This
another
is
guy,
almost like
and
if
I think you only get one of those two.
But that almost feels like if the 06 Celtics traded for like Joe Johnson and Al Horford.
Yeah, it might,
like, it's not the same.
It might be. They could just do the Nets trade, and
I mean they could trade for Al Horford.
Yeah, I bet the Celtics would be interested in that. Yeah, is he just a sleeper agent for the Celtics? Still just waiting to trade the white guy to Boston.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess you've opened my eyes for a buyer's world because I to your point, like, and what I wrote down is just like I'm not in love with the Cavs and Wolves pick. Like, I'm personally very high in the Cavs going forward, and I was this year. Obviously, the Wolves. I think like Anthony Edwards has shown like he really is a bona fide 1A guy, and like he's gonna be there for a while. So like
at best, it's gonna be late
lottery. Yeah. So like I don't know, and that's at best.
Yeah.
Like, likely is it's not in the lottery. So yeah, I mean, I guess my only fear of being a buyer is it almost to me feels like if Utah's really gonna make the chip to get that 1A guy, it's gonna start with a Markkanen for unprotected first from a team that actually has a chance to give you the number one pick. Because like I'm worried right now about like you do that Murray trade or you do that Levine trade or magically you do both and like you're like, okay, we're good. We're the fifth best team in the West. And now we've got Zach LaVine on this big contract and we've lost a lot of movability.
Yeah, I would definitely lean for the Murray trade.
Yeah.
Like if you could choose one. First of all, just he's contract controlled for the next 5 years. So DeJounte Murray, I'm sorry if you don't want to be in Utah. You have to be. And it would be like a Sexton, Olynyk, Talen Horton-Tucker, a lot of expiring money there. Kelly Olynyk is an expiring $12 million contract. And then, I don't know, maybe you can get away with just one of the Minnesota or Cleveland picks. But two, why not? You have so many young players anyways. Like, How do you really want to take 3 first-round picks next year? That would be my favorite one. And then you also get the Clint Capella money back, so you can add that into your like big swing during the summer or during next season for the next like angry star. Maybe you can do a similar thing of pushing it down the road in the offseason with like a Draymond Green for Clint Capella thing. I don't know.
Yeah, there's so many different ways they could go. I guess the final thing on the Jazz then, like right now, this is the bottom, or this is 8 through 12 in the West. Suns 8, 21 and 18. Jazz 9, 22 and 20. Lakers 10, 20 and 21. Rockets 11, 19 and 20. Warriors 18 and 22. So like, where do you think the Jazz finish?
I mean, it's hard to not think, at least at this point in the season with the information we have, that they're going to finish above the Warriors. I do think this is a play-in caliber team. Where do you think they finish?
I think that
their middle of the road strength of schedule going forward as well. So it's like not that they've played a super easy schedule.
This is tough. I mean, the Rockets have kind of like, kind of fallen back
off
to earth. But again, this is where I feel like I'm always like the anti-fun guy when teams are on these crazy streaks. I'm like, yeah, it's, December. Like a lot of teams go on crazy streaks at one point in the season. So I think we're seeing the best of the Jazz right now. I say 10. I think like the Rockets, I feel like honestly should not be a sub 500 team. But if they are going to keep being one, like I feel like they could be 10 ahead of the Rockets. I know the Lakers are a team we kind of disagree on. I just kind of refuse to believe the Lakers are going to be a sub 500 team the rest of the season. So I'm going to have them at 10.
Yeah. Okay, we're right around the same place for the Jazz. Yeah, I definitely don't think they're going to win 75% of their games
going forward.
But even if they stay at 500, and that's a pretty precipitous drop from 75%, it'll be hard for teams to jump them. Like, just look at all the teams in that area. They are all struggling to stay at 500 right now.
Yeah, I mean, they have kind of a fun stretch here. They've got the Warriors tomorrow, which, like, who knows what the Warriors...
Yeah, the reeling Warriors.
The reeling Warriors. The Thunder, which, like, hey, man, at home, you know?
Hey, you've been beating every great team in the league, so let's see it.
So this is the stretch that I feel like will really decide, like, if the Jazz like are for real or not. So they have their rematch games. They've got the Knicks, the Sixers, the Bucks, the Thunder, the Suns, Warriors, and then the Lakers. So that like 6-game stretch in February, I feel like maybe kind of determines what this real Jazz team looks like.
Yeah, no, and just coming right up to the trade deadline, that's kind of the perfect stretch to have games like that where you can really assess what you're going to do for the rest of the season. Mm-hmm. But come on, go for it. Try to win. Let's see it.
Yeah.
Maybe you can knock a big dog out. That's exciting.
True. All right. Should we get to best take, worst take?
Let's get to best take, worst take.
What was your best take this week?
Oh, okay. So I'm kind of breaking foul trouble like
norms
with this one, because this take was just so confounding. It was actually made a couple weeks ago, and it is equally my best take and my worst take of the week. I'm wondering if you have it as well, because I felt like it just needed to be part of this conversation. Kyle Kuzma.
What did he say?
Couple weeks ago,
the Pistons.
The Pistons broke the all-time losing streak record. Kyle Kuzma tweeted a quote tweet of the final score of that game and said, at this point, it's like, don't be that team. Of course, yesterday, the Wizards were that team. They lost to the Pistons, giving them only their second win since the first week of the season. And I'm like, it's so embarrassing and bad. I didn't know which way to go, because I feel like it is the best take of the week. It's like, yeah, no one wants to be that team. Especially no one wants to be you, Kyle Kuzma, because you completely embarrassed yourself for saying this.
He jinxed him.
He jinxed himself.
You got to give... I will give this to Kuzma. I think he meant the team to actually break the streak, which was the Raptors.
I understand that, but also that Raptors team was like half of an NBA roster. Okay, because they just made their big trade.
True. Also, I mean, I will also say, like, yeah, I mean, even if that's like what he did meant, like just specifically the streak, it's not like the Pistons didn't just go right back into starting a new losing streak.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I feel like it's equally the worst take, because
it is a great take. You don't want to be that team.
It's a great take, but also you are on the team that would do it. If any team, you got to be self-aware. Dude, you're on the Wizards.
Yeah, has he seen the standings lately? Does he know how close he is to where the Pistons record is right now?
I wish Kyle Kuzma would just get out of his own way sometimes. I've always kind of liked his game, especially the way he changed his game to fit into the championship Lakers team. But man, sometimes he just takes colossal L's.
Yeah, and this is one of the worst ones on at least Twitter-wise that I feel like Kyle Kuzma's ever taken.
Well, I've got another worst take.
Okay,
but I'm gonna go to my best take.
Yeah. Give me both. I'm sorry, I had to.
No, of course. But to a great guy, Giannis Antetokounmpo, As we know, a couple nights ago was blowout central night in the NBA. We had a Celtics thrashing of the Bucks. The Thunder pulverized some team. There was a lot of blowouts one night. Giannis said, quote, "If you don't play hard and give everything to the team, there are times where you might get booed. Shit, I'd boo myself tonight too." These guys are making way too much money to not try hard every night. And I'll be honest, Patrick, I don't care if it's a back-to-back. I don't care if it's a back-to-back-to-back-to-back. I don't care. Play hard.
I have been, this is on another night recently, but I've been so vocal on this podcast about how high I am on the Celtics and thinking that the Celtics are gonna be kind of a dominant team and win the championship this year. But the one thing that has shaken my faith in the Celtics was the Celtics going down by 30 points at halftime against the Bucks in the marquee Eastern Conference matchup of the season. I don't care if it's a back-to-back. Have your dudes play in the second half. Have a little respect for yourself.
Mazzulla is the biggest fraud watch coach.
What the heck? I get it. Sit the fourth. I don't care. But you just got embarrassed in the first half and you don't even try?
They need the mental energy to watch the town for the 20th time that week.
Was it Missoula who said he watches the town every
week?
Day?
Yeah, dude. I feel if the Celtics don't win the championship, there's going to be a lot of what were they thinking bringing Mazzulla back?
Oh, yeah. No, that is going to be
happen.
The thing. And everyone's going to be like, Brad, you got to get back on the bench. Even though he's been the best GM in the league.
Yeah.
But
all right, my worst take. I've already given this guy a worst take, and he won that week. And I actually think he's got a really good, strong chance to win again this week. I think we might have talked about this. Carmelo Anthony said, quote, "The Nuggets gave Jokic number 15 as a petty maneuver to erase his accomplishments." So, Patrick, I was like, you know what? What were Melo's accomplishments? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
He had 3 All-Star appearances. That's less than you'd think.
With the Nuggets.
He had 1 All-NBA second team. It's pretty good.
Yep.
3 All-NBA third teams. So I said, what is the let me find a similar player. So I found a player from Carmelo Anthony's draft class. Chris Bosh. As a Raptor, he made 4 All-Star appearances, so more than Melo. He also had an All-NBA second team. Now, here's what distincts Chris Bosh from Carmelo Anthony. Chris Bosh left as the franchise's all-time leader in points. Blocks, he still is. Rebounds, he still is. And the Raptors gave his number 4 to Scotty Barnes, who was an actual lottery pick with actual expectations. This Jokic take is so bad. The Nuggets clearly didn't draft Jokic with high expectations, given they drafted him in the same draft as Yusuf Nurkic.
I'm with you. It's complete bullshit. They did not give him Carmelo's number to select. They didn't think Jokic was going to become a top 10 player all time.
Yeah,
But I will push back a little bit. Melo did have some really great accomplishments specifically for the Nuggets. The Nuggets are a team that had, I don't think, ever made the Western Conference Finals before that run with Melo. He was probably the team's best player all time, at least in the NBA, before Jokic came along.
And he's also really cool. That's my counterpoint. He's really cool, and he has a really good MTV Cribs episode. So you should check it out.
And also that. Thank you, Max.
Well, I might push back, though. I would argue Carmelo is his generation's Alex English.
Yes, Alex English was a certified bucket.
David Thompson is also very in that
David Thompson
scoring forward
was
role.
Great, but they didn't have quite the team success that Melo had in his abbreviated time with the Nuggets. But yeah, I mean, Melo, you got to get over this. They didn't give him your number because they don't like you. They gave him your number because
also you didn't
don't think about you.
You didn't leave on good terms.
Yeah. Totally. It could have. You were an expiring contract, and you could have just waited and walked away, but you did not want to do that, and you ended up ruining both franchises for a while because of that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so weird to get upset about. Chris Bosh isn't I can't believe they gave Scotty Barnes number 4.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. It is a bad take. I just don't. I don't know. I don't want to
disparage Melo's time. Yeah, I feel like I've done a lot of disparaging Melo. Melo was awesome, but I feel like when I look back at Carmelo Anthony's career, he's a Knick. He's a New York Knick through and through for me.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It's right there. Like
Everybody had that mellow powder blue Denver Nuggets jersey though back in the day.
that's true. That's true. I do kind of think of him as a Nugget.
Really, I just think of him solely as like a Knick. I don't know. It's like he wanted to be a Knick. He stayed for a long time. Some of those Knicks teams were really fun and awesome.
Yeah, talk about a bad divorce though. Him and the Knicks also had a terrible one. But yeah, I don't know. It's just I feel like with the Knicks, you have like so much success in the like 90s and in the 70s, 80s that you can point to. But with the Nuggets, it's just like, you know, they were pretty good in the ABA and then they were absolutely awful. Like they should have moved away. And then they lucked out and got Carmelo, were a little bit relevant. And now, of course, they've entered their Quesarito era with Nikola Jokic.
I guess the main point being there's a lot of players on the Melo tier. Like, I guess a lot of people would say Melo is better than Chris Bosh. I don't think that's unfair. But, like, in terms of just accolades and what they did with their franchise, like, Bosh, I guess, is more impactful for the Raptors in that sense. Like, the all-time leader in points, rebounds, and blocks is kind of crazy. Like, and, like, he doesn't care if they give... Like, players of that tier get their numbers taken.
Yeah. It's very, like, Vince Carter-esque.
Yeah.
For the Raptors of, like, they were both, like... They both kind of like redefined the sport in their areas, but also just like kind of their illusions of grandeur ruined the end of their stint in both of those towns.
Yeah. All right. So the worst take, is it Kyle Kuzma or Carmelo Anthony?
Max, who you going with?
I think Kyle has to take the L.
Let's go.
But it was a nomination for best take.
It was also a nomination for best take, but it was also a nomination for worst take. That's why Kyle Kuzma is next level.
That's true.
He's breaking history. It's never been done before. He's a champion.
This is why the Grizzlies should trade for him and not Mikal Bridges.
Exactly. I gotta look in. I didn't even think about that. I love that Kyle Kuzma fit on the Grizzlies.
All right, so Kuzma, worst take of the week. Who was worst take last week? I already forgot. I feel like the takes we've had some like really, really bad ones at the beginning of the season. I feel like the bad takes have gotten a little less bad.
It was James Worthy.
Oh yeah.
That was a good one. That was a good one on LeBron's dunk. Did you see Paul George talking about his thought process there? That was pretty funny. I gotta give you
shout out Paul
your
George.
Flowers, Paul George.
Keeping it humble, keeping it real. We appreciate you, Podcast B. All right, we'll see you guys on Thursday. Peace.